CHU DSP, another Harman diffuser from Moondrop, yay, but is it good? Well, if you heard the original CHU, then it's basically the same, but just with a DSP cable this time. The graph and sound pretty much the same, with the imaging being a little bit better on the analog 3.5mm version, but they use the same driver, the design, the shell, they're all very similar, like pretty much the same, and the only difference is now you get the option to mess around in the Moondrop app with the DSP cable. The overall sound of the original CHU and the DSP is a warm Harman signature, which means that most people will enjoy this. Bass texture is okay, not as clean or resolving as like the EW200 or like something more expensive. It's what you expect at this price, right? Slightly warm leaning, overall on the softer side when it comes to the tactility and the bass impact, but it's fine. Similarly, mid-range is also okay. It's a Harman mid-range with the gain in the 3K region, helping to like balance out that extra bit of mid-bass and really help vocals to stand out more and not get completely buried. Vocals are slightly colored from the extra little bit of mid-bass. Overall, they're still fairly open and extended, but just not as, you know, detailed, clean, clear as something like the WANER. But treble wise, the original CHU and the DSP is probably only second to the Tangent 1 3.5 in terms of like the overall extension and the overall air. It's not sharp like the original CHU, which is good, you know, it's pretty smooth for the most part at mid volume. It scales fairly well, I would say. I wouldn't recommend blasting these, but it's fine. The amount of air you get is what you expect at around $25. It doesn't really stand out in any region per se, you know, nor does it do anything wrong. But for some of you, the gain and the upper mids might be a little bit much, as you know, it's even more than the EW200, and people found the EW200 like slightly bright. Overall though, the CHU DSP is just pretty solid budget all-rounder like the original CHU. If you already have the CHU, you don't need to get this. Now, in terms of the DSP and the Moondrop app, there's a lot of limitations to it, I would say. If you have an iPhone that's using a lightning port, so anything besides the 15 Pros, then you're gonna need to buy a USB-C to lightning adapter for like another $10 or so. So that's just added on top of the $23 and kind of bumps it to the $35 range, which has other competitions with, you know, at that point you have other sets like the R2, the Blondes at 300, the Trin Couch, and even the LAN, which are just like all better sound wise. So it kind of depends on like the phone you have, like if it's Android or if it's like iPhone. The app still works on the iPhone, but it's just that the value wise it takes a hit because you gotta, you know, buy a dongle. There is some delay sometimes when it comes like the pause and play when you click on the mic. It's fine for the vast majority of the time. Sometimes it does lag out a bit, and other times you get these like weird artifacts in the background when it's silence, like a tss, like it's just like small sound. You know, Super Reviews also mentions this in his May review as well, so just something you should look out for. Likewise, the custom EQ settings saved in the DSP also doesn't work with other DACs outside of the phone that, you know, has the app. Maybe they can fix this in an update, but if you try plugging in the CHU DSP into like another DAP or something, you'll just get the stock sound and not the new PUQ you saved. As for now, the PEQ seems like it's only usable for like the phone that you currently have the app on. Which leads to my point, if you listen off your laptop or an external DAC amp setup, I would personally still go for the original CHU or like the Tangent 1 3.5 or even the WANER and just EQ it with the APO app or like a Mac EQ, since both the WANER and the Tangent 1 3.5 sounds better to me. Like personally, the WANER is cleaner, it's more natural in the vocals, while the Tangent is like smoother and it's like airier. I just don't see the DSP version to be enticing on the desktop, since, you know, you can just use any other EQ app with a traditional analog 3.5 4.5mm cable that has better imaging, no delays, as well as, you know, avoiding the small drawbacks of DSP. But on the other hand, if you have an Android and want to use it with your phone, then the CHU DSP is pretty good overall, I would say. Again, if you're into EQing, there's a lot of different sound profiles to mess around with, and the app for the most part works well without much issues. You don't need to spend that extra $10 to $15 on, you know, extra adapter, which is why I think the CHU DSP is actually worth it if you have an Android over something like a 3.5, because you do have the option to mess around with the EQ settings. As for some comparisons, compared to the original CHU and the original Zero, the CHU 3.5 or the DSP are both an upgrade from those altogether. They're less sharp in the treble and the upper mids. The timbre is less metallic-y, you know, better low end as well. However, if you want a cleaner set, then stuff like the WANER, the EW100, the ZGAT Newell, they're all going to be better than the original CHU and the Zeros. They're less metallic sounding, not as thin in the vocals, and, you know, have more low end emphasis, more impact to the nose, better note weight, and overall it has better vocals and mid-range versus the the CHU 2. The WANER would be the most balanced out of the three, whereas EW100 and NUO are slightly more specialized when it comes to the vocals, with the EW100 having more gain, feeling more extended and open in the vocals, and the NUO being sharper in the end notes. So depending on like your sensitive regions, either the EW100 and the NUO will work if you want a slightly more vocal emphasis set. Then versus bassier options like the 02 and the QKZ HBB, both of those are gonna have more impactful and heavier low end. It's meatier, it's huskier, it's a little bit warmer, and they're gonna be better for genres like hip hop, whereas the CHU DSP is more of an all-rounder that does everything okay, not gonna do anything wrong, gonna have a nice time, and just like a jack of all trades. Compared to some other IEMs with switches like the Trin Orca that essentially tries to replicate the variety you get with the DSP cables, the CHU 2 I would say is overall smoother with better treble extension than the Orca, whereas the Orca feels cleaner, it's less shouty sometimes, and depending on the switch it's also more energetic. So if you're on a budget and the Orca is like 20 bucks, you can get it for like $15 on sale. So overall the Orca would be like the better value. I will say though, the cable and the pouch you get on the CHU DSP are better than most $20 IEMs, probably one of the best under $25, but you also run into the aforementioned issues using DSP versus analog. So really it just comes down to what type of sound you're looking for and your personal use case, or in other words, do you strictly use it off your phone or do you use it with your desktop? Since the tech wise they're all around the same, under $25, so it really comes down to, do you need the extra EQ function on the app? As for some upgrades, the SimGot EW200 and Moondrop LAN would be the direct upgrades to the CHU 2 sound wise. If you want a cleaner sound like the WANER, then the LAN would be like that balanced sound upgrade, whereas the EW200 is more resolving and engaging, but with the same slightly bassy all-rounder sound signature. All in all, I think DSP definitely has potential. It's just not entirely complete as of now. Depending on your use case, it may or may not work for you. For example, again, if you're on a budget and you don't want to spend over 20 bucks and you have an iPhone, then you can't really use this unless you get an adapter, right? It does work pretty well for Android. Again, if you need a budget option for your phone, these would be pretty nice. But if you are on desktop, I don't see the point of buying DSP over a traditional analog cable, because the traditional has like less, I guess, quote unquote issues, less sizzling sound, no delay, slightly better, more accurate imaging, right? And you can just EQ it with like a APO or again Mac EQ. But yeah, I hope this review was helpful. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see everyone in the next one.